Okay. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this financing session at this Bioeconomy Stakeholders Conference. During this session, we will really look to what kind of financing is available for the bio-based economy, but also what kind of financing is needed. We have heard this morning during the plenary that capital access was considered as a bottleneck by many biotech companies. Myself, I'm active in several European projects, and one of the European projects is called Bio-Based Northwest Europe. It's an Interreg project where we did a survey towards SMEs and spin-offs, and access to capital was seen as the major bottleneck by the SMEs. Another project is called BioTIC. It's more focusing on the bottlenecks in the industrial biotech and the bioeconomy, but also some industrial sectors, so also large companies. And besides access to feedstock price and access to market, also access to capital was seen as a hurdle. Of course, there are different kinds of access to capital. If we have access to capital for research, innovation, demo, flagship, but we have seed capital, venture capital, and even access to capital to construct new construction plans. So my name is Dirk Carré. I'm today the director of the Bio-Based Industries Consortium, which is the industry consortium representing the industry within the public-private partnership we have heard of this morning, so the Bio-Based Industries Initiative that will also be presented by Barend. So as I said, the main objective today is to look what is available, what kind of financing, for what can it be used, is there enough, are there any gaps, what about the access, are there any bottlenecks, and of course, if so, what can we do to overcome the bottlenecks. And we have three speakers to start the discussion, because we really want to have a discussion with you. So I have asked to have short presentations so that we have enough time to have an interaction with you. We have Barend Verachtert. Barend Verachtert is the current executive director of the Bio-Based Industries Initiative, so the public-private partnership itself, and he will explain also what the BBI can do, and that's mainly in the area of innovation. We have Günther Vestel from Vestel Capital, and he will give us the position of a venture capitalist and also focus on the early stage technology investments. And we have Carlo Mango from, he's the R&D director from the Fondazione Cariplo, and he will explain the role of an investment bank foundation and the role they can play in the bioeconomy. So let's start with Barend Verachtert and the Bio-Based Industries Initiative.
So, ladies and gentlemen, a real pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. As you will notice, I'm also working for the European Commission, so I'm having two hats. I'm an official with the European Commission, and I'm also the interim director of the BBI, Bio-Based Industries Joint Undertaking. What I will do in the next 5 minutes or so is give you a very, very quick overview of what the BBI is about, but I will start by putting it in a slightly broader political context. As you know, as we are speaking, the European Union is going through a change process. There is going to be a change in leadership, and indeed, President-elect Jean-Claude Juncker already has announced his policy priorities for the next 5 years or so. In fact, he has announced 10 such priorities, really with the view that Europe should be big where it makes sense and small where maybe the member states, the regions can play a better role. Now, within his political guidelines, Jean-Claude Juncker has included a new boost for jobs, growth and investment. And there's an interesting detail here that I'd like to point out for you. I think we, also during the current Commission, we spoke a lot about the importance of growth, economic growth and jobs. But it was in that order that it was presented. So now jobs are a very key target here, in addition to growth, of course. You cannot have one without another. And this definitely is a policy area which is of prime interest to the bioeconomy in general. So what I've done, I've picked out those policy areas which are immediately applicable. There's also a resilient energy union with a forward-looking climate change policy. And there again, this goes right at the heart of the bioeconomy. I don't need to remind you what is happening in Ukraine these days. I think it really has confronted Europe with some very hard questions in terms of its energy supply and energy security. And looking forward to the future, there's definitely a goal for the Union to become somewhat more independent in terms of its energy needs. And there's a strong belief that biofuels and bioenergy can make a contribution here. And then a deeper and fairer internal market with a strengthened industrial base. And yes, indeed, also Commissioner Geoghegan-Quinn pointed this out this morning. It's very clear that there's going to be a drive to boost a larger share of manufacturing industry in GDP, which is currently measured or estimated to be around 16%, and there's a clear goal, a target there to beef this up to the tune of 20% by 2020. And again, bioeconomy and bioindustries can play a major role here. In the context of his political guidelines, Jean-Claude Juncker not only expressed some political desires, he also made it somewhat more concrete by announcing that over the next 3 years or so, an investment package of around 300 billion in additional public and private investment in the real economy. And with the real economy, he means the industry will be organized. Now, focusing on the bioeconomy. Now, what is the bioeconomy really about? It is investing in value chains. That's the theme of this conference, moving from sectors to systems. So really looking at the bioeconomy as being an integral part of society at large. This is what we would like to aim for. And the BBI, Bio-Based Industries Joint Undertaking, which is the same as public-private partnership. Joint undertaking is simply the legal form of the public-private partnerships. Will indeed offer a platform for industry stakeholders to get organized along value chains. So what the PPP is doing, it's really an organizing principle. We think that it is all important, and it will hopefully create a drive for industry and other stakeholders to further develop the bioeconomy. Now, what the bioeconomy also is about is the integration of public and private financing vehicles. For instance, at the public side, we have Horizon 2020, and indeed the Commissioner repeated it once more this morning. Under Horizon 2020, we have over 4 billion euros that will be made available for research and innovation activities in the context of the bioeconomy. And this effectively is a doubling of similar resources which were made available under the previous framework program, FP7. It does illustrate the importance that the Commission is paying to the bioeconomy, its real commitment to the bioeconomy. We really believe will make a change for the future. And a real challenge here will also be to try and integrate these programs which exist at European level, to integrate them with other programs at regional and at local level. And I'm thinking here, for instance, of the European structural and investment funds, which are deployed these days for the next programming period across Europe and in all the regions, almost 300 of them. And it will also be about leveraging additional investments. What we want to achieve, what we need to achieve is leading by example. There again the PPP comes into play. What we need is really success stories. What we really need is to show that it is possible, not just to show that it is possible to develop value chains, also to show that it is possible to mobilize support financial means at the regional level and combine it with, for instance, European programs. Now, and this is my last slide already, because we've been asked to be very brief. On the PPP itself, so what we are really proud of is that we have been able to build a program here with a value of around 3.7 billion euros. It's a very important program. It is effectively doubling the resources that are available for bioeconomy-related activities under the Horizon 2020. Now, through the PPP alone, we are trying to make a similar effort. And these 3.7 billion euros, and that's the second point we are very proud of, at least from a Commission perspective. At the Commission side, there's going to be an investment of almost 1 billion euros. At the side of the industry, there's going to be an investment of something around 2.7 billion euros. In other words, for every euro that we make available on the public side, there is going to be 2.7 euros that is going to be made available at the industry side. Now, the industry, of course, is not here for charity reasons. They really think it is necessary to have this PPP, and that's why they have been coming forward with this level of investment. As I mentioned, we do believe the PPP will become an important catalyzer for the development of the bio-based industry throughout Europe in its many different facets. We already are looking at very fine examples in the north, in Finland. There's very nice examples here in Italy, Crescentinos, and Sardinia, and so on. So a lot of action is already taking place, but it's not enough, especially if we want to ensure a future for Europe which is sustainable, a future for Europe where Europe can compete with other regions of the world in such a way that is good for society at large. We do believe that PPP will act as a catalyzer. And so, to sum it up, I'm standing here to make a statement. The future is bio-based. Thank you.
Are there any specific questions to this initiative, to Barend, on this initiative? We first go to the next speaker. So Hunter Vesser from Vesser Capital, who will focus on the early stage technology investments in Europe.
Yes, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. To be a little bit more precise, I'm not a venture capitalist, I'm a private investor, meaning I invest own money, but nevertheless the opinion of venture capitalists and private investors are nearly the same from a global perspective. I would like to focus on early stage technology investments. I'm 10% of my time I'm working at ETH Zurich, the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, and we took a look on the bio-based industry. You see here one chart, and the core message is that small companies, startups, and SMEs, small and medium companies, are very important for the technological development. It's clear we need big companies for the commercialization, marketing resources, and so on, but we will not see the breakthrough technologies in the future without small companies, new companies. Another evaluation we did currently, and we will publish it also in Nature Biotechnology. If you are interested in more details, I have a long version of my presentation. I think it will be uploaded to the website so that you can take a closer look to these numbers. Because we have only 5 charts, I would like to make only 2 points here. The one point is that we saw significant investments that are global numbers in the area of the bioeconomy or industrial biotechnology, especially you see 2006, 2007, companies like Amyris, LS9, and SolarCyme in North America were financed in that 2 years. Therefore, we saw these huge amount of 1.6, 1.7 billion investment in 1 year. You see VC investments versus VC divestments. Net stock of VC is the resulting number. But if you take a look on the years then 2008, 2009, 2010, so you will see that we have on a global basis only around 500 million new investments, and that's not a lot because in these numbers we see venture capital investments and private equity investments, meaning also investments in later stage companies. And that is my second point coming out of this study. Here you see the split between investments in companies up to 3 years and companies more than 3 years old. And there's a clear trend. Investors, private investors, venture capital, institutional investors, they increasingly prefer to invest in mature companies, meaning they invested in new companies 2002, 2004, 2006. But since then, they invested in companies already established, older than 3-4 years. That's normal because that are the typical follow-on investments, but the message is the numbers I told you, 500 million per year, most of the money is going into already established companies, and what we miss are investments in new companies. Therefore, Dirk asked me to have 2-3 charts regarding situation. That was the situation. One chart regarding gaps and bottlenecks. We see that we need early stage technology investments for the bioeconomy. We see that financial investors are very important, but they don't think strategically. And financial crisis and all these things, what they do is very cyclical, meaning that we don't have this long-term sustainable investment behavior within the scene, and that's a disadvantage. At the moment, everybody talks about apps, new apps, e-commerce, social networks. A lot of money is going in these things, but nearly no money, new money in biotechnology and not in industrial biotechnology. A few years ago, we had a different situation, keyword clean technology. All the investors invested in clean technologies, including biotechnology, but now we have different atmosphere and we have to change that. Otherwise, we will not see significant investments during the next 10 years. Therefore, financial investors, they need more incentives. What I proposed last slide was asked by Dirk to give some recommendations for discussion. We have initiatives in Europe to attract financial investors, but these initiatives, they are not known or under critical or not sustainable, don't know. What I recommend is that these initiatives have to be bundled. There must be one flagship lighthouse initiative, for example, could be one idea, to have an early stage technology investment fund coordinated by the European Investment Fund, could be. Perhaps we have a discussion here whether that makes sense or not. Important is, like in the PPI, that financial investors are engaged as well as industrial companies. We see a lot of corporate venture capital initiatives in the pharma area, meaning companies, corporates do venture capital within their own organization. These things are very successful. Novartis Venture Fund, Boehringer Ingelheim, sharing all they followed with dedicated venture capital funds. That is a very interesting idea, and it is a very major source of innovation in the pharmaceutical industry. Yes, and important, because I'm private investor, is that you don't have only venture capitalists in this initiative. Also take a look on private investors, business angels. There are a lot of investment schemes on a European level which can also be integrated. That I would propose for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Hunter. I'm sure you will receive a lot of business cards afterwards because many people are looking for money. So maybe before we start the discussion, because you gave already a lot of material for the discussion, let's first listen to the third panelist, who is Carlo Mango from the Fondazione Cariplo, and he will explain us the role of the possible role of an investment bank foundation in the bioeconomy.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to share with you a peculiar approach we have in investing in bioeconomy, in the field of bioeconomy. And our approach is, we are a foundation, a philanthropic institution. Someone says that we are an endowment, a huge endowment, 7 billion euro. And we are not only, a granting basket. Every year we grant some 150 million in the different sectors of the foundation. Our idea is that there could be another approach where, we do not talk about only public and private cooperation, but we also try to boost together different funding schemes with different natures and aims. And this is what we try to do. We consider innovation. I'm the director in the foundation of the Research and Development Unit and Technology Transfer. This is not just a trivial aspect, because what we are trying to do is to generate a sort of ecosystem of a sort of value supply chain in the field of bioeconomy, and not only all those knowledge-based businesses. Our idea is the first step is to boost the production of rationals. How we decide. We have to know to decide better. This is the first issue from our point of view. So we invested a lot of money in foresight analysis, in definition of the roots of our granting activity. So the granting activity is not only, a gift, but it's a part of a strategic plan aimed at generating a social return of investment. So we started in 2007 a very big program in the field of agricultural research. The name is AGER, is the biggest Italian grant-making activity, and also one of the biggest philanthropic cooperation between foundations. 13 foundations granting altogether 27 billion euro in the field of agriculture. And this is very important, not only from the amount of money we grant, but also from a methodological point of view. And this is my main consideration about cooperation, to put together, to test, to validate forms of cooperation, and this is very important. After this program started a cooperation with Agropolis Fondazione in Montpellier. We are very proud of this partnership, because this is we are not only funding research in some cultivars, but we are also trying to generate opportunities involving developing countries. This is very, very important, because we strongly believe that an important aspect of our funding activity is based on a responsible approach. So we fully agree on the Commission statement, Responsible Research Innovation, that has been launched by the Science Sweden for Society and received by the framework program Horizon 2020. So a lot of different funding schemes, not only from the granting point of view. We also started the program. We thought that there was really a bottleneck, or a big problem, a barrier, and in trying to boost the relationship between science-based businesses and opportunity of funding. So an idea was to start a seed fund, two programs, one seed fund devoted to innovative startups, but this was an approach that needed in the field of bioindustry to be boosted another time. So what we are doing now is we started a program that is called AgriSeed, and our idea is to boost investment with the aim also of generating what we call social return of investment, generating new jobs, repopulating our countryside, the mountains, and a lot of areas in Italy that has some problems from this point of view. So the idea is that big endowments could act in a different way, tolerating lower return of investment in their asset, allocation, but also having the idea, the strategic idea of generating opportunities and return of investment in our society. As a conclusion, I was asked to be very fast, and I'll do it. From our point of view, those new forms of cooperation between public and private have to be integrated with a key role that philanthropic institutions, charities could do. And this part is a sort of seed money could be considered in order to start very effective, from our point of view, policies due to one aspect that is a typical aspect of philanthropic institution, our independence. And this is very important when dealing to sustainable economy, when dealing with very critical aspects related to biotechnology. And due to this, I think that our institution could play a good role in this area. Last conclusion is, I want to mention to you that we had a very important responsibility for the next year, because the municipality of Milano City gave us the responsibility of the food policy of the municipality. And this is aimed at generating a program of stakeholder engagement and with the idea of generating a legacy after the World Exposition that will be held in Milan in 2015. So my idea that I want to share with you in the discussion is that putting together both the three sides, the public side, the policymakers, the private enterprises, but also the private not-for-profit, could be the good approach in order to have a sustainable approach on these businesses. That is very important, boosting also the responsibility and the way on which we will try to achieve these goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlo. So, are there any specific questions linked to the presentations we have heard from the three panelists?
Yes, my name is Achim Böhnkerk. I'm from DG Enterprise, from the chemical industry and from the European Commission. And I have a question to our colleague here from the private non-for-profit area. And what I would be interested in is, have you heard about the advisory activity that the European Investment Bank has put in place? And there are new activities on the guarantee funds. And do you think that is anything that you may wish to link up with, because you said you want to coordinate and boost a combination or collaboration between all of these activities?
Thank you very much for your question. Yes, we are aware. I think that we can play a key role. I must say that I have a second hat. I participate to the supervisory board of the European Investment Bank Institute that is trying to boost, corporate social responsibility of the bank. And I think that this issue is very much linked, because, we have to join forces, and I think that the EIB guarantees, but not only, today are a key, offers a key funding schemes in order to implement also infrastructures, but also to boost our competitiveness in general. We had an experience a few years ago where we joined forces with the EIB for big, research infrastructures in our region. The idea was to lower the, taxes of interest of the loans of the EIB. And this was a very good experience from our point of view, but also from the EIB, because we joined forces also from a methodological point of view when doing due diligence, because, on the field, you can, for instance, know better which is the business model of a peculiar research center or an hospital. And so the answer is yes, we will be very much interested in join forces on this aspect.
Can I ask to present yourself, name and organization?
Thank you very much. Mindaugas Maciulevičius. I'm representing European Economic and Social Committee. I'm coming from Lithuania, but also I am from agricultural background. The question I would have, it would be both for the venture capital and for the social capital, so-called. What is the biggest problem at what we can do to promote your colleagues and yourself, as you said very clearly, that we need to do something about raising awareness and getting them on board because they're not investing. The fact of the matter is the European investment that we were talking about, it's for the major players, and if we're talking about the SMEs, which I fully support definitely, but we don't have any program or any way of financing them at the very, very beginning. And there are a lot of people with bright ideas, and definitely you're right in saying that it would be a way forward. So what we can do, what is your vision, and is there anything that European Commission can do, or national governments, or anyone else, as we as NGOs, as a platform? Thank you.
Yes, the one thing is that you have more visibility for these investments, meaning you need successful examples, because these people invest if they see that other people earn a lot of money with their investments. That's so simple. But what means that? How I said before, this dedicated investment fund could be the starter to have more visibility for these topics. That could be one thing. Another thing is, I haven't thought about that, is really now the idea based on your question, is to make some marketing activities to bring more visibility to these topics. To sit down, to look whether there are success examples in Europe, and then to promote them. Could be an interesting idea. For example, we sold one of my companies a few weeks ago, and I would say it was really one of the major success examples in Europe, but nobody knows. And it's not my intention to go around and tell the people what we did, but that could be one thing for these promotional activities.
Just one comment. I mean, perhaps one gap is the approach that those kind of private investors has in when talking with SMEs, mainly in the field of traditional business such as agriculture, for instance. An idea could be to generate a new approach, not only based on finance. Finance is a sort of interest on just on markup. That's the point. The other issue could be to boost a sort of, let me say, an industrial approach. It means I'm interested in your growing or in your path of improving your own activity, and I invest in you. Of course, if we talk only and we consider only the financial point of view, we are just interested in some mainstream activities, middle caps or big companies that could give you a good return of investment. Otherwise, I think that we have to boost a different approach, perhaps testing and validating new methods. And this is the reason why in the future we have a dream of starting a sort of agribusiness dedicated fund on this aspect. So.
Bruno Jarry, French National Academy of Technology. Just more than a question, I would like to give you a fourth possibility that we are experimenting in France now. You may have heard of Investment for the Future, which is a large 35 billion program that the French government launched 5 years ago to support innovation in general. And I'm sitting at the board of this organization, and we recognized very early, 4 years ago, as Mr. Günther Festel mentioned, that indeed it was very difficult to find ways to support industrial biotechnology in particular. I mean, medical biotechnology works very well, but industrial biotechnology is difficult. So we found one way, which may not be possible to expand everywhere, but we used direct investment of the Banque Publique d'Investissement, which is an investment public bank, to invest directly in the capital of startups which already have shown innovations. And this way we can help bringing other investors around and help them to build enough capital to build demonstration plans or these sort of things, just as an example of what is also possible using public money, but in another way. And of course, public money cannot alone support such an operation, but it can be a very good trigger and help bringing together other venture capitals to help funding these sort of options. This is very common in Asia also. This is a mechanism which has been extremely useful in Asia for a lot of industrial biotechnology outfits.
Yes, thank you very much. That's a very good point. If governmental banks or agency, if they invest, the second investment by venture capitalists is always easier because they see that somebody is sharing the risk, and therefore that's really a good approach. It's interesting. I don't know this example. Normally governmental agencies, they only invest if other investors are first investors, but in your case obviously it works well.
Another question or remark? Proposal or good idea?
Patrick Dicker from the German Bioeconomy Council. There are billions for sustainable investments in the market. Is there a way to redirect these money for mission investing into bioeconomy? What is necessary to do so?
What do you mean by billions of money in the market?
There are billions of money for sustainable investments to protect climate or from the nations who give their money to projects that are sustainable, but you have to fulfill certain requirements. And how is it possible to redirect this money into bioeconomy? Because I think bioeconomy is not recognized as a part for sustainable investments.
I think I understand your point. Again, that could be one thing of visibility. One example could be, don't know whether you mean that, is the activities of Climate Kick. And they try to improve investments in the clean tech area. And indeed, biotechnology is not of relevance for Climate Kick. Don't know why. I tried a few years ago to convince them that biotechnology is interesting, but that they favor other kinds of projects. Therefore, I would answer your question again, a marketing initiative, or it's not marketing, it's more public relations, to have more visibility for biotechnology and the bioeconomy.
I give you just an information as far as our endowment is concerned, our Board of Trustees decided that over the overall endowment of 7 billion euro, 500 million dedicated to mission-connected investment. This means that, and this is, I must be very, very honest with you, it's a big fighting area within our managers internally, because we have to decide what is a mission-connected investment, how and where we want to put money, and when we want to disinvest, or which is the exit strategy on those businesses. But I think that this is a very important suggestion that could be given when there are huge endowments of banks or big institution. The idea it could be as a part of concrete, corporate social responsibility, because otherwise we are just talking about, cosmetic or something like that. As a concrete part, to devote a defined part to mission-connected investment. This means the idea and the challenge on having a return of investment for the society. This could be not only in the field of sustainable technology, but also in other areas. That could, for instance, social housing. Why not? Why not?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Anna Serio. I'm a financial economist. I would just like to add that in the agriculture sector, we are just working on a system to bring loans to the agriculture sector, and it is a securitization technique on eco-project loans based on indicators on agricultural activities that are on the conversion to agroecological practices. And this can be quite a good idea for bio-based industries that can focus on, for instance, climate change challenge. And why is it interesting? Because the ECB, for instance, is following our project, and they said it is really interesting if you do that, if you succeed in starting these securitization techniques. Well, it can be very interesting for us, because we will say that this, what we will do, that these assets will be considered as eligible. And so if you understand a little bit the financial mechanism, it is very, very interesting. So maybe it can be interesting for the bio-based industries, but of course, specifically for the climate change challenge.
Yes, good example. But then I, as financial guy, would come and say, do I have a long-term security that is discussed now is also valid in a few years? The point is, we saw that in the biodiesel area, that they gave grants, tax subsidies and so on, and after a few years they changed the rules, and all the biodiesel producers, they went bankrupt. And if I take your example, or one thing I have in mind is biojet fuel. That's a big thing, and we need biojet fuel. But then we have this palm oil discussion in Malaysia, in Indonesia. Is it sustainable? What means sustainable? If you take a jatropha plantation in Cameroon, Africa or so, then we have a lot of discussions where companies, let's take a large airline, Singapore Airlines or Lufthansa, then they ask, do we have the stability in the regulations for the next 10 or 20 years so that we can invest money and that we don't have trouble in 2-3 years because regulations are changing? That would be my first idea. But nevertheless, if you have this long-term stability, it would be a very good thing to build on that.
Jari again, I have a question for you, Dirk. From where you stand, what are the reasons why the industry and the financial people are so shy to invest in white biotechnology? Because there are probably good reasons why they don't.
Well, first of all, I wouldn't say that there are not investments done in white biotech or bioeconomy. If you look to what's happening, I mean, if you had the same discussions, for instance, 4 years ago or 5 years ago, then I would completely agree. we have seen the last few years a number of investments in Europe, also in new production plants. But of course, compared to other parts of the world, it's going slowly. There are two aspects. First of all, if we talk about industrial biotech, what is the product of industrial biotech? It's not always visible. Except the biofuel area, it's a bit more visible, or at least it's on the agenda today. But many other products, if you have investments in the bioplastic world, or it's not seen as industrial biotech sometimes, so it's not always visible, so the awareness also is not always there. That's one aspect. On the other hand, what we have seen also is that we have invested in Europe a lot in research, and then afterwards many companies, also European companies, went to other parts of the world for the deployment. And one of the reasons was access to finance, by the way. And not only just access for seed finance, but mainly access to finance to go one step further towards demonstration, towards deployment, even setting up or building new plants. We have seen many European companies, I will not put names on the floor, but many European companies that did a lot of research in Europe went to, for instance, the States, because it's quite easy to obtain from the Department of Energy huge amounts of subsidies to launch demonstration projects. This is, by the way, one of the aspects, one of the reasons why with the industry we have asked and we have set up together with the Commission this public-private partnership, because it was not really mentioned by Barend. One of the focuses of the public-private partnership is not only on research and development, but also the PPP will also quite a lot invest in demonstration and flagships, which is new innovative production plants in Europe. This is quite new. So partially, let's say the climate, and this was not possible in the framework program. So the climate is changing in Europe. There is more funding available also for demonstration and even new flagships. Is this enough compared to the rest of the world? Probably not, but it is certainly a good signal. We had a similar discussion, I have to say, last week during EFIP in Reims. And then we saw that, in fact, there is quite a lot of financing already today. European Investment Bank is giving loans, cheap loans, guarantees. We had private banks, we had the Rabobank, there is quite a lot of money. But we also heard from some CEOs that are investing in these new products that the access to finance, obtaining this, the bureaucratic work in Europe is huge. The time to obtain the grants compared to the States. So I would say we see a switch. There are more and more investments in Europe. We will see the results of the first call soon. I know that there are companies that are willing to invest in new production plants also in Europe. So the climate has changed. There is funding also available, maybe not enough seed funds and so on, but there is still a lot of bureaucracy, the time to obtain them, the access to the finance is very complex. And that's another step, another hurdle we have to overcome in the future.
Quite limited.
Yeah.
And this is a big reason.
This is also true, but that's then more, let's say, if we go to more the commercial phase, we have the state aid rules in Europe, which limit the public, let's say, participation, if I can say. While, for instance, in the States, I know that some companies, recent ones even, can be subsidized
I think it's good to mention
quite a lot.
Because it's really a lock, and it would be good if one day the lock can be open.
And another point in your direction is that the chemical industry is more conservative than the pharmaceutical industry, because indeed it's frustrating that a lot of money is going into medical biotechnology projects and nearly nothing into industrial biotechnology projects. And in my view, also one major reason is that the pharmaceutical industry is more open, keyword open innovation, meaning they give more money for external developments, they spend more money for buying external services. They have these corporate venture capital funds, and in the chemical industry it's more conservative. We have a few activities of DSM and BASF, but the number of investments is very low, and the interesting point is if they invest normally they invest in North American companies and not in European companies. And that could be also what Malaysia is doing, could be interesting to analyze with their biotechnology fund managed by Burrell and Company, because they said we would really like to bring technology to Malaysia to support Malaysian technology, and we have this investment fund. We can also invest in other countries, but the focus of all activities should be Malaysia. Perhaps that could be also a thing for Europe.
Let's go to Brazil.
Thank you. I'm Luiz Henrique Canto Pereira. I'm from the Brazilian Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation. And in this respect, I agree with you. And I wonder if it could be a strategy to include the health sector or red biotech in order to leverage the funding from both private and public sectors.
Can I ask what you mean to leverage the medical biotechnology area?
I mean to get funds from both private, pharma or equipment or diagnostic sectors, and from public sectors as well. Ministry of Health, research institutes from health sector.
Okay, I understand. That could be a good idea, because we see that sometimes it's possible to leverage technologies, biotechnologies coming from the medical area to the industrial area. And let's take a platform tech or a supplier like Kiagen. The industrial biotech market could be interesting for them to supply their things to the research-oriented companies, and therefore it's a new market for them. Yes, good idea.
One issue could be also to take advantage of some osmosis between the two disciplines. For instance, today we saw some slides concerning functional foods or ways in which the two disciplines, green biotech and red one, could. But there's also another issue, and I think the point that was raised previously concerning the access to capital is very important. We have to consider that, the peculiarity of investments in the field of agriculture is the fact that these are really small businesses, and the problem with the investment funds is that entering in due diligence costs the same, even if you are talking about a big business or a small one. So, it is very, very important that we generate a different form also of approaching to those businesses, because we have also to generate a different culture. We were talking about sustainable businesses, but how we can evaluate, how we can put it in the, in the selection process of the deals that we are going to fund.
I just want to point out that from the public side, we already are doing a little bit of effort in that direction. In the context of Horizon 2020, we have developed the notion of key enabling technologies, which also have been developed outside Horizon 2020 as such. The very idea is this is an industrial-oriented program where indeed technologies, and for instance biotechnologies, are being developed with a very specific aim to find application across different sectors. So some effort is already being invested there.
Another question?
Natalia Grete, Nordic Council of Ministers, Nordic Innovation. First, I wanted to comment on the statistics about SMEs and over 3 years old companies. In the Nordic region, we have actually a problem that we have a very good system which supports SMEs, especially public system, but we have big problems for growth entrepreneurship, and we have big problems of engaging investors into developing our companies to become bigger and to employ more people. So that's an issue for today. in Nordic Innovation, we've been looking to this opportunity of linking big companies and SMEs. If public initiative could encourage this linkage, then the SMEs could get access to lab facilities, for example, and their first customer, and the big companies could get the flow of innovation, and it would be easier to attract private funding, and also would support corporate financing. Could you comment more on this theme, please?
Yes, regarding your second point, I totally agree. The startup companies, they should look for partners and leverage that technology by working together with established companies to use their marketing and sales resources. I think that was your point. You get more attention from established companies, you get funding from established companies, and at the end, they could be the exit partner to sell your company to the established company. Your first point depends on, because that's part of the logic, that you have a lot of young companies and only a few survive, and the companies surviving, they are the new champions. Because I say that because I saw an interesting point that somebody said. The survival rate in Europe for startup companies is 90%. In the North America, the survival rate is 40 or 50%. And this guy from the University of Lausanne, it was one major argument that survival of the fittest, this mechanism is that mechanism that global champions like Google, Facebook are developing. Therefore, I wouldn't see it as a disadvantage if not all small startup companies survive. If, let's say, you have an attrition rate of 90%, then I think you would have a problem and should work on that. But I would say that a lot of small companies are not financed, are able to get a growth financing. That's part of the logic of startup financing. Therefore, I would see it not so critical. Hopefully that helps.
I can share with you from public perspective what we're doing in Horizon 2020 and what we're doing in the PPP. In Horizon 2020, you may be aware that we have introduced a new SME program, which is very much inspired on the American experience in SBIR, Small Business for Innovation and Research program. What is specific about it is it really allows individual SMEs to explore the feasibility, first of all, of brand new ideas. We give them a lump sum to do so. And then we also offer a facility for them so that they can actually invest in the idea and test the feasibility of it in real conditions. So this is for the early stage SMEs, I would say, that really want to fully explore new ideas. Now, in the context of the PPP, the public-private partnership, we have taken some initiatives to encourage, in particular, the participation of SMEs. It is true that this PPP, of course, about also large-scale investment in the bioeconomy and in bio-based industries, but it's very much also about trying to generate brand new ideas and really be creative and innovative. And that's where SMEs come into play very clearly. And therefore, what we have done is we have not only developed work programs, which we believe should be attractive to SMEs, but also we have catered for SMEs in the way that the financing is going, especially their way. So for research innovation actions, when you're an SME, you get the full funding is for your activities. When you're a large company, actually you have to cover your own expenses. But basically, we would expect large companies and these SMEs to be together in the same consortium. So we are working. We are very conscious of that, and we're trying to create an environment which is conducive for both large companies and SMEs to collaborate.
Please.
Hello, Fred van Beuningen. I worked as an executive in industry, and I'm a clean tech investor. I have a few points to make. First, on the PPP, I am curious about the track record of PPP structures, because it could be, and that's my question behind it, that it de-risks projects from larger industries that they would otherwise have done also. Second point, I think that by now, and a recent Deloitte report underscored that, we have quite a decent raw material situation in Europe for the bio-based, Northwest Europe, that is, for the bio-based economy. Malaysia was mentioned. If you want to create a level playing field, I think the investment climate is an important point of attention. And that is really where government and where Europe could step in and help to create that level playing field. Thirdly, I think that entrepreneurs, sorry, I take the opportunity to make 3 points. Entrepreneurs and SMEs need customers and they need cash flows. So these billions that are now dedicated to investment, I know investment may be sexy and good for the fund managers, but could it be an idea to allocate some of that money to be a lead buyer as governments or as Europe, and to integrate bio-based in the procurement policies?
So in the spirit of true partnership, both Dirk and myself will try and handle these questions. So the first one related to on what basis proposals will be selected. Well, the very short administrative answer is will apply exactly the same sort of evaluation and selection criteria as we are applying under Horizon 2020, so which is the framework program for research and innovation. Which by any standard is considered as, in terms of the quality of the evaluation, you know, at the top on a world scale even. That being said, it is true, of course, that Horizon 2020 is very much a research innovation program aimed at the research community at large. And so, now where Horizon 2020 is trying to make a difference is to put more emphasis on the innovation side and not only on the research side, as has been the practice in the past. So we would no longer be satisfied with seeing excellent research and science and even technology. We would like to see some credibility in terms of bringing this to the market as well. What we're trying to do with the PPP is actually pushing this further. So in the PPP, we're really looking for projects that make a very credible case that at the end of the day, the investment in the research innovation aspects will find a return in economic reality. Now, but the real question was, okay, even when you fund these very good projects, would they not have taken place without the support? And that's a very fair question, and unfortunately we cannot run a program in parallel to test this hypothesis, and it is indeed a dilemma for this sort of programs in general. You know, should you design programs that sort of support that are highly risky, you know, and really go for completely breakthrough ideas with then possibly a very high chance of failure, but if you make it, then you're really going to change the world. Or should you really go for, you know, those are extremely likely to win. Now, what the industry has been telling us is that without this program, a number of the investments and the level of investments that could be achieved would not be the same. So you were using the expression de-risking. That's exactly the argument that the industry has been using in the discussions with the Commission. What this program is about in the mind of the industry is de-risking the level of investment, and that will help them make the decision to make the actual investment. I don't think it's appropriate now to go in the actual detail, but in addition to the investments and the participation in the actual research projects, there will be, to a very high degree, additional investments by the industry, in particular in infrastructure, that will be made available to the research innovation program. But one would not take place without the other. Then your question on creating a level playing field, of course, we are 100% in agreement. For some reason, our Malaysian friends come up all the time this afternoon, and rightly so. They are very well placed, to be very competitive in the bioeconomy. That being said, I think whereas it is a major challenge indeed to get access to biomass and a European sourced biomass, we do believe it can be done, and in fact it's one of the challenges that the PPP is addressing, how to get organized on this. And it's, now for the investment climate in general, then of course we are looking way beyond what the research and innovation program can do. We are looking at regulatory issues, we are looking at tax policies, we are looking at standardization, certification schemes, and this indeed brings me then to your third question. We're also looking at public procurement programs. You will be aware in the US there's a BioPrefer program, for instance, and this, which requires state agencies to have a minimum level of procurement that is bio-based. This is definitely an idea that we will further explore and entertain. But one specific criterion that definitely we would like to build in is that of sustainability. It's, one thing is to have bio-based products, but the real challenge is to have bio-based products produced in a sustainable way. So it's a good idea, and we are very much aware that we need to further explore it.
Maybe